Warhammer 40K Chaos Gate Daemonhunters. It's one mouthful of a game title and one that I've had my ever-watchful eye on since it was first announced in late summer of 2021. Developed by Complex Games and published by Frontier Foundry, as gameplay started releasing, I couldn't help but think that this game looks like a solid 40K entry into the Xcom style turn-based tactical genre. Considering that Gears Tactics was a fantastic game that took a dive in the same style, I was immediately drawn to Daemonhunters. Well, last week Frontier invited a handful of creators and myself to a preview gameplay event where we were shown some more gameplay in greater detail and got to chat with the devs on the inner workings of the game thus far. And I have to hand it to Complex Games. Xcom meets 40K is indeed what we are going to see, but it goes well beyond just a simple comparison. In this video, I want to dig into those details to show off how, yes, this is definitely a turn-based tactics game, but also how Complex is taking that genre and molding it to the 40K universe in a way that honestly makes me, well, pretty dang excited. Let's dive in, starting with the setting: Grey Knights, the Bloom, and the Baleful Edict. For those that have no clue what Daemonhunters is about, let's take a plunge. Chaos Gate Daemonhunters will see you at the head of a group of Grey Knights, one of the most secretive chapters of the Space Marines in the 40K universe. They are extremely powerful psychers that can tap into the Chaos Warp to not just wield blasters and melee weapons, but use warp energy as well. These Grey Knights will have a huge array of customization in Daemonhunters, not just in the typical manner of weapons, armor, or class-specific abilities. In Chaos Gate Daemonhunters, you will be able to customize names, crests, skin, hair color. Great ways to personalize a campaign. Oh, and even the standard ideas of weapons, armors, and abilities are still well fleshed out to allow you, the player, to really pick and choose exactly how you want your squad to look like, on top of customizing loadouts depending on the mission. Their abilities are tied to 4 basic classes: Interceptor, Justicar, Purgator, and Apothecary. In typical turn-based tactics style, each class has their own forte. The Interceptor is melee focused and can transport to different places on the map. The Justicar's frontline emphasis has heavy armor to resist Nurgle and can bolster nearby troops for more actions. The Purgator is your ranged knight, blinding the enemy, stripping them of mutations, and sanctifying ally ammo for some holy firepower. And the Apothecary is of course your healer to keep your fellow knights staying in the battle longer. One last thing about the Grey Knights themselves is the concept of willpower. It's a special reserve that's filled up primarily by killing enemies on the battlefield. Once filled up, your knights can use their willpower on special psychic powers such as attacks or special buffs for your men. These willpower abilities may make the difference on the battlefield if used at just the right moment. The troops under your command have been sent to the Tertius sector to combat a concentrated attack by Papa Nurgle himself, personally my favorite Chaos God, in a plan to infect every system in the sector with the Bloom, various strains of plague that could wipe out billions of lives if left unchecked. The Bloom is so deadly that losing too many systems will actually trigger the entire sector to open completely to chaos, get sucked into the warp, resulting in the end of the game. More on the Bloom in the next section though. Now, you'll be traveling throughout the sector in the Baleful Edict, the only strike cruiser the Order can spare for this campaign. The Baleful Edict is your base of operations in every aspect. It transports your men across systems, it acts as a barracks to house them, an armory to upgrade them, hospital to heal them, and a research facility to prepare them to fight the Bloom's various strains. At the start of the campaign, the Baleful Edict is in sore shape, but you'll be able to fix her up and upgrade as things progress, from gun platforms to engine upgrades to extra capacity for more Grey Knights. Using the Baleful Edict to travel, it will be up to you to choose what systems to fight in and when. It's important to understand though, every system cannot be saved in its entirety, so figuring out which ones to sacrifice is honestly half the battle. The setting for Daemonhunters is a fantastic one that will sweep you through a very engaging evolution as the campaign progresses. So let's see what that looks like by checking out the stages of Bloom and how it affects your mission. Papa Nurgle's Bloom plague spread isn't just a one and done thing. You have to think of the Bloom in stages like a plant, and Those stages also determine the type of missions you'll be entering. The early plague spreads via seedlings, literally plague-filled corpses designed to seed the area. In this stage, your primary objectives will be centered around stopping the plague entirely in the system by removing any seeding enemies, but it might not be your only objective. In the Libris Malleus, Inquisitor Kai will help you figure out how to optimally combat the bloom during your campaign. So harvesting these seeds might just aid in research that can help your Grey Knights to fight it in the right way at the right stages of infection. And with multiple strains of the bloom available, it will be in your best interest to prioritize gathering these strains in the early game while seedlings still exist. The later stages of the bloom, or the flowering, will see a more aggressive and focused approach, as the infection has spread quite heavily, and the only thing halting a total loss of the system is to prevent the completion of a Nurgle ritual event. While we weren't able to really dig into those specific later bloom details, these missions will be significantly more dangerous and unpredictable thanks to a unique mechanic in Daemonhunters called Warp Surges. Warp Surges are exactly what they sound like. Unpredictable surges of warp chaos energy that trigger a huge range of combat mission events. The more corrupt the system is that your combat mission takes place in, the higher the possibility of one or more warp surges will occur. These events range in scale and variety, from simple chaos reinforcements onto a battlefield to powerful mutation buffs on Nurgle's troops, even different hazards and effects on the battlefield itself. You won't know where or when these will happen, so it's entirely possible you'll have barely scraped through a mission per se, your soldiers half dead, and then reinforcements will drop in right before you slice the last enemy up or right before you reach your objective. Now, corruption or infection spread aren't the only triggers. To stick back to the lore a little deeper, your Grey Knight's Psyker abilities are actually quick extracts of the warp itself. They are literally tapping into the very thing that seeks to consume the entire system. Every time they use their willpower to tap into it, it increases the possibility of tripping the warp surge. It's a small layer of detail and strategy, but it may influence your later missions in advanced bloom territories. Do you risk that super cool willpower attack early in the mission, one that could cause a massive mutation and make a big boss even harder to kill? In my opinion, anything that causes a player to really have to think twice about using something, that risk versus reward aspect, it's a great mechanic, and I hope that it plays well into the campaign overall. All this sounds pretty good so far, right? However, I'd be remiss to ignore some rather fun and interesting parts of the real chunk of Daemonhunters, and that's engaging battle mechanics. Now, this section will be much less of a narrative style like I've been so far, and more of a list of features that are making it into the game that I'm excited about. First, dynamic maps. It may seem rather obvious for a turn-based tactics game to have a range of map types, and with the setting in 40K, there's for sure a variety of maps where missions will take place. But when I say dynamic maps, I mean that the bloom will change maps overall and throughout the campaign. A Gothic cathedral map at the start of the campaign with a seedling spread can at a later point be infected to a greater degree in the same system. Should you come back to it, it will look very different than when you were there before, with new obstacles that might limit or change your strategy. This helps make sure that no two maps play exactly the same and allows for replayability or just a lack of stagnation overall. Next, destructible terrain. Your battle maps will feature a fair degree of destructible terrain that you can use to your advantage. Pillars can be knocked over to crush enemies. Explosive barrels can be shot to do an area of effect damage. Various pieces of cover can be shattered by certain abilities, opening your enemies or even your own men to attack where it was impossible before. And there appears to be an abundance of bridges from what we saw. It would be just terrible if there were several Nurgle's followers on one and a grenade happened to explode the bridge. This in a way adds to the dynamic maps. No doubt knocking that pillar over in one mission, it would stay knocked over if you returned to it. That bridge you blew up, well, it was your path to the objective the first time around, but now it's gone. You got to take the long way around. The combination of these two alone add a lot of interesting strategy to the game. Next to last, permadeath and critical wounds. This was asked by Party Elite in our interview session, but his concern was that we would get attached to these characters that would never die. and therefore we could be completely reckless with them throughout the whole campaign with no consequences. The team's response? Each Grey Knight has a number of what's called critical wounds. Since these knights are arguably one of the most powerful branches of the Imperium, they won't go down easy anyways. However, too many critical wounds, and the Grey Knights can indeed die and be gone forever. The best piece though? You, the player, can choose the number of critical wounds. Want to power fantasy it up and make your knights gods? Rank that number up. Want actual strategy and precise decisions to keep your men alive? Crank that number down so permadeath is always at their doorstep. It was honestly a sigh of relief that we can lose our men, as that's something I'm always in favor of to keep the player on the edge of their seat throughout an entire campaign. But then there comes my favorite part of the battle potential thus far, and that's precision attacks. After a certain number of attacks, or at certain points of action for your Grey Knights, you can use a precision attack. This attack allows you to choose one aspect of the enemy you want to affect, be it severing a piece of their being that prevents them from attacking or using an ability, stunning them for a couple of turns, applying a bleed debuff to their health, even better yet, the ability to execute them and rid yourself of an enemy altogether with. Precision attacks are not new to the genre, but the way they're being used in Daemonhunters is pretty dang cool, and as they apply to both melee and ranged attacks, you can rest assured you'll be able to use everyone in these types of attacks in one way or another, and I for one look forward to seeing that in action as I play. Outside of those more specialized mechanics, Daemonhunters looks like it will play very similarly to these other turn-based tactical strategy games, and that's not a bad thing at all. The mechanics within the game will indeed set it apart from the rest though, and seeing how you can use your entire team to really break down some of Nurgle's big bad bosses is cool, I'm not gonna lie. In all, I was pretty impressed with the preview shown to us by Frontier. Daemonhunters looks to be a lot more in-depth than I originally thought it would be, and the combination of the setting and Nurgle's bloom, what could be called base building through the BALEFUL edict, and the battle progression and mechanics, I think we have a solid 40k XCOM blended game on our hands. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Daemonhunters releases on May 5th, 2022. So if this video piqued your interest in the game, be sure to go wishlist it today to prep for release. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. A big thanks to my patrons and my YouTube members for the support. It's greatly appreciated, and it goes a way to keeping operations up and running. This is Havoc, and I will see you all in the next video.